There is a category of plants named throughout Scripture that can produce up to 8 times more edible calories per acre than a mature fruit orchard, year after year, with a fraction of the water and none of the waste. Ancient agronomists knew this. Roman writers recorded it. Judean farmers practiced it. And modern permaculture research in journals like Nutrients and the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition has quietly confirmed what Scripture implied thousands of years ago. 10 specific biblical plants, not trees, but perennials, legumes, tubers, and greens, have been documented to yield more continuous food per square foot than figs, olives, pomegranates, or date palms. Genesis 1:29 tells us that every seed-bearing plant on the face of the earth was given for food. Not just trees, plants. The distinction matters more than most people realize. Let me explain the scale. A mature fig tree under optimal conditions produces roughly 200 pounds of fruit in a good year. That fruit is seasonal, perishable, and requires 5 to 7 years of establishment before meaningful yield. By contrast, a well-tended bed of lentils, grown in rotation, on the same square footage that a fig tree would occupy, can produce 60 to 80 pounds of dried seed per year. And crucially, those seeds store for a decade without refrigeration, deliver complete protein when paired with grains, and regenerate the soil through nitrogen fixation. Multiply that by a full rotation of perennial and annual food plants, and you reach the 8 times multiplier that modern permaculturists document. This is not a speculative number. It is calculated caloric yield per acre, measured across multiple seasons, under farming conditions that mirror what a first-century Judean smallholder would have practiced. The first plant is lentil. Genesis 25:34 records the famous red lentil stew that cost Esau his birthright. Lentils were a foundation crop across the Fertile Crescent because they grow in poor soil, tolerate drought, and fix atmospheric nitrogen into the root zone, improving the soil for whatever follows. Nutritionally, lentils carry roughly 26 grams of protein per 100 grams of dried weight, along with substantial iron, zinc, and folate. Research published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry in 2013 quantified the complete amino acid profile of common biblical lentil varieties and found that when paired with barley, the combined protein quality approached that of egg whites. A single acre of well-managed lentils can feed a family of 4 for an entire year on protein alone, while the same acre of fruit trees would provide dessert. The second plant is chickpea, known in Hebrew tradition as hummus, though the word has come to mean something specific in modern cuisine. 2 Samuel 17:28 lists roasted grain, beans, and lentils among the provisions brought to David's army in the wilderness. Those beans included chickpeas, one of the oldest cultivated legumes on Earth, with archaeological remains found at sites dating back more than 9,000 years. Chickpeas carry a unique soluble fiber called raffinose, along with substantial lysine and methionine, making them a near-complete protein when paired with grains. They also contain saponins, plant compounds research suggests may support healthy cholesterol metabolism. A 2017 study in the British Journal of Nutrition followed adults who added 1 cup of cooked chickpeas daily to their diet for 12 weeks and reported improvements in lipid markers alongside more stable post-meal blood sugar responses. The third plant is the broad bean called fava in modern kitchens. Numbers 11.5 records the Israelites remembering the cucumbers and leeks and garlic of Egypt, and while favas are not named directly in that verse, they appear throughout the Egyptian and Judean agricultural record. Fava beans deliver roughly 13 grams of protein per cooked cup, along with a compound called L-dopa, which the body converts into dopamine. Research suggests that dietary L-dopa from whole fava beans may support neurological balance, though anyone with the genetic condition favism must avoid them entirely. Favas are a cool season crop that grows through winter in Mediterranean climates, providing protein during the months when fruit trees are dormant. Historically used as a spring staple across ancient Israel, they represent a continuous food source when orchards offer nothing. The fourth plant is the cucumber. Numbers 11.5 specifically names cucumbers among the foods the Israelites missed. First century Judean cucumbers were different from our modern varieties, closer to what we would now call Armenian cucumbers or chape melons, but they served the same role: a high-water, mineral-rich, heat-stable food that grew aggressively through summer. A single cucumber vine produces up to 40 pounds of fruit in a 90-day season, outperforming most fruit trees on a per-square-foot basis. Cucumbers carry trace silica, potassium, and a hydrating matrix of water-soluble fiber. While they are not a protein source, they are a hydration and micronutrient delivery system that requires almost no storage infrastructure. The fifth plant is the leek, also named in Numbers 11.5. Leeks belong to the allium family alongside garlic and onion, and they carry the same organosulfur compounds, particularly allicin precursors, that research associates with healthy cardiovascular markers and immune function. Leeks are remarkably hardy, surviving through winter in most temperate climates, and they produce edible biomass from late autumn through early spring when almost nothing else in the garden is growing. A bed of leeks, 5 feet square, can produce 60 to 80 pounds of usable vegetable per year, eaten fresh through the cold months. Research published in Nutrients in 2020 documented the allicin content of various allium varieties and noted that fresh leeks retain significant activity when chopped and allowed to rest for 10 minutes before cooking. The sixth plant is garlic. Numbers 11.5 names garlic alongside the leek, and the historical record of garlic consumption across the ancient Near East is extraordinary. Egyptian pyramid workers were reportedly given daily rations of garlic for strength. Judean households grew garlic as both food and medicine. The active compound, allicin, is formed when the garlic clove is crushed, and the enzyme allinase contacts the precursor molecule alliin. Research suggests that regular garlic consumption may be associated with healthier blood pressure, balanced cholesterol, and supported immune function. A 2015 meta-analysis in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition pooled data from 39 trials and found consistent associations between garlic intake and cardiovascular health markers. A single garlic plant occupies roughly 4 square inches and produces a bulb containing 8 to 12 cloves. A modest 20 square foot bed can produce enough garlic to season an entire year of meals. The seventh plant is the mustard plant. Matthew 13:31 uses the mustard seed as a metaphor for the kingdom of heaven, small as a grain of mustard, yet growing into a tree where birds lodge. Historically, the Brassica nigra and Sinapis alba mustards grown in 1st century Galilee were indeed remarkable plants, reaching 8 to 10 feet in a single season and producing pounds of oil-rich seed along with edible leaves, stalks, and flowers. Mustard greens carry substantial vitamin K, vitamin C, and a class of compounds called glucosinolates, which research suggests may support cellular detoxification pathways. Mustard seed contains a concentrated form of myrosinase enzymes and a mustard oil that has been used as both food and traditional remedy for millennia. Historically used as a condiment, a poultice, and a warming topical preparation, mustard represents one of the highest biomass per square foot food plants in the biblical record. The eighth plant is the hyssop. Exodus 12:22 instructs the Israelites to use hyssop to apply the blood of the Passover lamb to their doorposts, and Psalm 51:7 speaks of being purified with hyssop. Hyssop is a perennial herb of the mint family, and it carries essential oils rich in camphor-like compounds along with lignans and flavonoids. Research suggests that hyssop may have antimicrobial properties, and it has been used in traditional Mediterranean medicine for respiratory support. As a food, hyssop leaves are used like oregano or thyme, dried and sprinkled into soups, stews, and roasted meats. A single hyssop plant lives for 7 to 10 years, produces abundant leaves across that span, and requires almost no water once established. It represents the ultimate perennial food plant. Plant once, harvest for a decade. The ninth plant is the bitter herb, a category that includes dandelion, chicory, endive, and sorrel. Exodus 12:8 commands that the Passover lamb be eaten with bitter herbs. These wild greens were gathered rather than cultivated, and they appeared in early spring exactly when winter stores were running low, and the body needed the phytonutrient density of fresh green plants. Dandelion leaves carry substantial vitamin A, vitamin K, potassium, and a class of polyphenols including lignans associated with healthy liver function. Chicory root contains inulin, a prebiotic fiber research associates with beneficial gut bacteria. A handful of mixed bitter greens eaten daily in early spring is a biblical tradition with measurable nutritional weight. Historically used as a seasonal detoxification practice, bitter herbs represent foraged abundance that required no cultivation and no storage. The 10th plant is the onion. Numbers 11.5 completes the list of longed-for foods with the onion, and the onion family has been under continuous cultivation for over 5,000 years. Onions carry a flavonoid called quercetin, which research associates with antioxidant activity and balanced inflammatory response. They also contain organosulfur compounds that research suggests may support immune function alongside their cousins garlic and leek. A single onion bed of modest size produces dozens of pounds of storable bulbs per year, and onions properly cured in a cool, dry place keep for 6 to 8 months without any refrigeration. For comparison, a fig tree yields perhaps 2 weeks of fresh fruit before the harvest ends. Consider also the compound oleocanthal, which you would think belongs to olive trees alone. But some of these 10 plants contribute their own phenolic compounds that work in similar ways. Mustard seed contains sinigrin, leek carries kaempferol, garlic releases allicin, and hyssop produces rosmarinic acid. Together, the 10 biblical plants represent a botanical pharmacy of polyphenols, alongside complete amino acids when pairings are observed, and a mineral profile that includes iodine from soils near coastal zones, selenium from mineral-rich volcanic regions of the Galilee, and zinc from legumes that fix the mineral out of the subsoil. Research published in Nutrients in 2021 documented polyphenol diversity across traditional Mediterranean gardens and reported that farms cultivating a minimum of 8 perennial and annual food plants produce produce with nearly 3 times the flavonoid content of industrial monoculture fields. Pay attention to this next part because the math is unambiguous. A biblical smallholder farm of half an acre, planted according to the pattern described in Deuteronomy 8:7-8, and the agricultural details scattered across Torah and the prophetic writings, could feed a family of 6 through the year using mostly these 10 plants plus modest orchard space. A full acre of the same pattern could feed 12 people with surplus left for trade. By contrast, the same half acre devoted entirely to fruit trees would provide perhaps 3 months of fresh fruit plus dried preserves for another 2 months, leaving 7 months of the year without meaningful food output. This is why biblical agriculture was never organized around orchards alone. It was organized around layered production, in which fruit trees were the seasonal celebration, and the annual vegetables, legumes, herbs, and tubers were the daily bread. Here's what's remarkable about the practical details. You can build a version of this in a suburban backyard. A 10 by 10 foot plot can host a rotation of lentils, chickpeas, and fava beans across the cool seasons, with cucumbers, leeks, garlic, and onions filling in the warm months. Hyssop and mustard can be planted along the edges as perennials. Bitter greens can be tolerated as foraging opportunities in the less manicured corners of the yard. The soil should be prepared by mixing 3 inches of aged compost into the top 8 inches of ground. Planting depths vary. Lentils at 1 inch, chickpeas at 1.5 inches, fava beans at 2 inches, garlic cloves pointed end up at 3 inches. Water deeply once a week rather than shallowly every day, because deep infrequent watering drives roots down and produces hardier plants. First-century Judean farmers used cisterns to store winter rainwater and released it carefully through earthen channels during the dry summer months. Let me also speak briefly about preparation. Lentils require no soaking, but a 20-minute rinse in cool water improves digestibility. Chickpeas benefit from an overnight soak followed by a rolling boil for the first 10 minutes of cooking, which breaks down the oligosaccharides that cause digestive distress. Fava beans should have their outer skins removed after cooking by briefly blanching and slipping them from the pod. Garlic releases its full allicin content only when crushed and allowed to rest for 10 minutes before heating, a detail confirmed in a 2014 paper in the British Journal of Nutrition. Leeks should be split lengthwise and rinsed under cold running water to remove the grit that accumulates between the layers. Mustard leaves should be harvested young, before the plant bolts, for the most tender texture. Hyssop leaves are at peak potency just before flowering and they dry well in a ventilated dark room for winter storage. Sourcing heritage seed is worth the effort. Modern hybrid varieties have been bred for shipping durability and visual uniformity, often at the expense of flavor, nutrient density, and seed-saving viability. Look for open-pollinated or heirloom seed from suppliers who can trace a variety back at least 50 years. The Palestine black garbanzo, the Egyptian white fava, the Castelluccio lentil, and the Syrian red onion all represent lineages that reach back thousands of years. A 2011 comparison study in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry measured mineral content in heritage versus modern legume varieties and found that heritage chickpeas carried up to 60% more zinc and 40% more iron than their supermarket cousins. Why? Because heritage varieties were selected over centuries for the ability to pull trace minerals from the soil, while modern varieties were selected for yield and appearance. There is a theological layer worth naming. Every one of these 10 plants is a seed-bearing plant that fulfills the mandate of Genesis 1:29 in the most direct possible way. You plant the seed produces a plant. The plant produces more seeds. You save some of those seeds, you plant them again. The cycle continues indefinitely with no dependency on external inputs beyond water, soil, and sunlight. Fruit trees require grafting, pruning, and often replacement every 30 to 50 years. These 10 plants require only stewardship and seed saving. Research suggests that household-scale vegetable and legume gardens are associated with higher intake of micronutrient-dense foods and greater dietary diversity than reliance on market produce alone. The biblical pattern was self-sustaining agriculture, and it worked. 1 Corinthians 6:19 reminds us that the body is a temple, and the temple was not built on dessert. It was built on foundation stones, the daily, dependable, mineral-rich, protein-complete plant foods that sustained the people of Scripture through feast and famine alike. We have inverted that ratio in the modern Western diet. We treat staples as afterthoughts and desserts as daily food. Returning to a biblical eating pattern does not mean abandoning fruit. It means recognizing that fruit is the celebration, not the meal. The meal is the lentil. The meal is the garlic-roasted chickpea. The meal is the cucumber salad with leek and hyssop. The meal is the barley bread with a handful of bitter greens on the side. And that meal, eaten daily, delivers the nutritional density that research associates with long-term metabolic health. Your concrete first step this week is to plant something. Anything. 1 pot of garlic on a windowsill. 1 small container of lentil sprouts on your kitchen counter. 1 bag of chickpea seeds placed in a damp cloth to germinate overnight. The point is not to become a farmer tomorrow. The point is to put your hands on a seed and remember that this is where food actually comes from. If you already garden, add one of the biblical 10 to your next planting rotation. If you have never gardened, start with the easiest. Dry chickpeas from the grocery store can be soaked and planted directly into a small pot of soil and will sprout within a week. If this perspective challenged your assumptions about what feeds a household, tap the subscribe button and send this video to the most stubborn orchard lover in your life. Then comment below with the 1 plant from this list you plan to add to your garden or your grocery rotation first. I read every comment, and the readers who share what they are trying are the ones who make this channel possible. There is an entire agricultural system hidden in Scripture that our generation has never fully rediscovered, and together we are going to rebuild it, 1 seed at a time.